What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G.S. and Matthews, break down all the original content you watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're breaking down the Becoming Cody Rhodes documentary that dropped earlier today on Peacock. WWE doesn't really do the WWE 24 specials anymore. I think they did one. I should remember. I probably watched it and reviewed it here on the channel. They did a 24, I think, for WrestleMania 38 a couple of months ago and put it up right before WrestleMania 39. Beyond that, they really haven't done a lot of 24s in quite a while. They did the Becoming Ric Flair documentary, which was about 60, 90 minutes, late last year, right after Christmas, and it was great. Watched it, reviewed it here on the channel at the time. Very enjoyable, worthwhile. This was much better. The Ric Flair stuff didn't really cover a lot of new ground. Not that this did, but there was a lot about Cody Rhodes' early life, post-WWE stuff, like initial run from, 7, 8 years ago. 2015, 2016, a lot of stuff about Stardust, his AEW run that you would not think they would touch upon, but they did. And a lot of talk about his father that I either had forgotten about, was very happy they touched on, didn't think they would, or I just didn't previously know. This was a really, really, really good documentary. Thoroughly enjoyed this. Every bit is worth the 2 hours as it lasted for. Definitely worth checking out on Peacock. They dropped it at just the right time, right before SummerSlam this weekend. It stretches from the day he was born up until WrestleMania 39. So it really covers the whole gambit from his early life, post WWE, like I said, after his first run with the company 7, 8 years ago, up until his return, the AEW stuff, and everything else in between. A lot of talk about Dusty Rhodes. This was excellent stuff, a lot of talking heads, and it kind of felt like this was supposed to culminate with him becoming the world champion. They talked about it so much throughout the fucking documentary. It kind of ends on a unsatisfying note because, spoiler alert, he did not beat Roman Reigns for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship at WrestleMania. So you would think, it's going to culminate with that. He finally wins the championship that he mentioned many times throughout this documentary, like I said. Finally win the title that always eluded his father. And he didn't at WrestleMania. He probably still will. I've been saying that since WrestleMania 39. I still don't agree with the outcome of Mania 39 of them against Roman, but I still do think that he will face and beat Roman for that championship at WrestleMania 40 next year. Why wait when they could have just done it at WrestleMania 39? Whatever. But still, this was a strong documentary nonetheless. They open it up with the mom, who recalls him being born in Marietta, Georgia, calling him Cody, coming up with the name. He was a very shy kid growing up, she says. Unlike the sister, Neil, who was very outspoken and very talkative and whatnot, I guess. Stephen Amell, by the way, serves as the narrator for the documentary, which is really cool. He actually, cheap plug, we just sat down for an interview a couple days ago. It was pre-SAG strike, but I put up the interview a couple of days ago on WrestleRant Radio, and here the video version on the channel, so check it out. The star of Arrow and Heels. Stephen Amell is awesome, so I was really glad, given his history with Cody and real-life friendship, that he served as the narrator for this thing, and not just some random other person. But they talked about how Dusty Rhodes could relate to everyone throughout his career, whether it was the rich man, the poor guy, the everyday man. Dusty Rhodes was such a fan favorite because everyone could relate to his character during his career. Cody's first memory, actually, is of Dusty, I think making his WrestleMania 6 entrance, if I'm not mistaken. It was one of those manias where they came to the ring in those little mini rings, and that was his first memory, not just of his father, but his first memory period, he says. He mentions how Dusty never won the WWE Championship. He contended for the championship at I don't think it was the televised show. This was many, 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 many years ago. But Madison Square Garden WWE show, went for the title, won the match, posed with the championship, but he won by countout. And as we know, championships cannot change hands on a countout. So he has that picture, which he has shared on Raw before. They've showed it in video packages and whatnot. That picture, he says, is in his master bedroom, even now, of Dusty holding that championship. His goal was always to win that title and bring it to his father and say, hey, listen, you didn't win it back then, but you can hold it in your hands now, which is really cool. His goal was always to be a great father, was Dusty, and he was a great father, they say. Yeah, Cody was with Dusty when he was inducted into the WCW Hall of Fame, which I completely forgot about, that they even had a WCW Hall of Fame. It was very short-lived in the mid-90s. That was in 95 when he got inducted. And the sister and the mom talk about how close Cody was with his father, with Dusty. Cody played football in high school, then he also did amateur wrestling in high school. He was terrible at first, he said, but he ended up working out and getting in great shape. They built him a gym in their garage. He became a local sports celebrity, according to the sister. We hear from Xavier Woods, who I know I've heard him say this story before, but it was really funny, how he was at a competing high school of Cody's. So he knew who Cody was, and he also knew that Cody was the real-life son of Dusty Rhodes. His dream, his fantasy scenario, would have been to have beaten Cody at one of those high school matches. And Dusty, being there, seeing that, would then want to train Xavier in the wrestling business, in the pro wrestling business, because he was so impressed with Xavier. That obviously never happened. Cody went like 101-2, which is fucking crazy. He became a state champ as a junior, a state champ as a senior. And when he won his state championship as a senior, I think, he made them bill him as Cody Rhodes for the first time ever, which is really cool. Because obviously his real name is Cody Runnels. He adopted the Cody Rhodes name for a state championship win as a senior, I believe. And when he was done, he wanted to throw his championships away to kind of signify that he was done with that chapter of his life and he was ready to move on. He didn't want to go to college. The mom wanted him to go to college. He did not want to go to college. He did not feel like that was where his heart was at. He had even told her, not everyone has to go to college. Instead, he wanted to act. He wanted to go the way of acting and then use that as his in to pro wrestling and kind of merge these sports entertainment worlds. So he moved to LA with the sister, who was already moving to LA anyway, in 2004 to pursue an acting career. We actually hear from his acting teacher, and I honestly, if I had known this, I had forgot that he pursued acting. I did not know that while watching this documentary, so I thought that was really interesting. It was also around this point that Dusty was struggling to pay the bills. He was not very wealthy. He kind of blew away all the money that he had in the 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever. He actually did a car commercial, Cody said. He has mentioned this elsewhere, that Dusty did a car commercial, not to make money, but to keep the truck that he had. Like, that's how broke they were. There's broke, and then there's broke, and that's what they were. Cody and Neil recalled times where the lights would go out because he just didn't pay the bill. Like, that's how broke they were at that point. And Cody always envisioned himself taking his father's Rolex that he had, but he ended up having to sell it for $20,000 and gave $10,000 each, not just to pay the house or whatever, but to each kid, to Neil and to Cody, to kind of for them to pursue their dreams and ambitions and whatever in LA. Gave them $10,000 each to go to LA. And he moved there, and again, we hear from the acting coach and whatever, and he did a great job. He would really commit himself to any role that he put himself in, but he just did not like the West Coast life. He had no success, had no prospects, and got depressed, he said. Ended up driving back home in early 2006. He told Dusty, he told his dad, listen, I want to pursue pro wrestling one day at breakfast. Dusty, after some silence, said, if you're going to do it, you got to be the best at it. It was around that time Dusty had returned to WWE as a writer, and Bruce said, well, he was in the creative process, but more as an idea guy and not really as a creative writer, if that makes sense. So he wasn't writing like segment by segment on Raw and whatever. Cody ended up joining OVW, their developmental territory at that point in 2006. And he kind of calls that his college experience. That was his college because he didn't go to formal college. Dusty got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2007. Cody was there for the induction, as was Dustin, a.k.a. Goldust, who was not interviewed for this thing, by the way, which I thought was weird because we've heard from, I think anyway, I'm pretty sure we've heard from AEW talent on documentaries like this before. I mean, he's his fucking brother. So you would think that they would have gotten him on here, or maybe they just didn't reach out. Maybe they did, and he said no. Maybe Tony Khan wanted no part of it. I don't know. Tony Khan seems like in the past, whenever WWE has asked him for anything, whether it be footage, an interview with someone, to be able to use someone, whatever, they've always said yes. He has always said yes. I'm not really sure what went wrong there to prevent Dustin from not being in this documentary. Not that the documentary needed him, but you would think we hear from the mom. We have even old footage of Dustin. We hear from the sister. We hear from everyone in that fucking family, Brandy Rhodes, but we don't hear from Dustin Rhodes, like his fucking brother. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what went wrong there, but anyway. They induct Dusty into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2007. And that was kind of Cody's breakout moment. He did a majority of the talking when inducting his father. And Vince was blown away by the speech. Cody wanted to give the speech, he said. He wanted to give a great speech, he said, because he didn't want to do his dad an injustice by kind of selling him short with the speech. Vince was so impressed that he turned to Bruce at the Hall of Fame and said, this kid's going to be a big star. I'm really impressed. They want him up here soon. And Cody knew that it was a gift and a curse that, one, they're high on me, but two, I'm not ready for the main roster yet. I'm not ready physically. I'm not ready mentally, emotionally, but I got to get ready because I know it's coming soon. Sure enough, he got called up to the main roster in July of 2007. He was less than 50 matches in his career when he ended up having his first Raw match that July, almost exactly 16 years ago. And his first opponent on Raw, none other than Randy Orton, someone that he would share a lot of history with in the years that followed. Orton says that he knew there was something special there from the get-go with Cody Rhodes. Cody says that he couldn't have asked for a better debut, couldn't have asked for a better debut opponent than Randy Orton. And he also talks the pressure, as this Charlotte, we hear from her as well, the pressure of being a generational talent, and how you kind of face more pressure because you're forced to live up to the legacy and follow in the footsteps of your father or mother or whoever being a second-generation talent. So he, speaking of such, joins the legacy with Randy Orton and Ted DiBiase in late 2008. They don't really spend a lot of time on this at all, and it was funny that they didn't really mention this because it's not really part of his story. It was more so Ted DiBiase's. The whole point of the legacy, and it gave Cody an opportunity to really branch out on his own, become a heel, get comfortable as a character, because prior to that, he was a generic jobber on the show. He was a World Tag Team Champion for 6 months with Hardcore Holly. Would have been nice to hear from Hardcore or hear them even acknowledge that. They didn't. They completely blew by that. But Hardcore Holly, I'm sure, taught him a few things when he first joined the road and whatever. But anyway, the whole point of Legacy was to get over Cody and Ted as future stars. Cody obviously is a star now, some fucking 15 years later. Ted left the company 5 years after Legacy started, a couple years after the group broke up, and he went nowhere in wrestling. He ended up leaving. He's on the verge of being arrested right now, I think, which is probably why they didn't interview him for this documentary. But I think Ted was supposed to be the breakout star. It would have been nice to hear him say, listen, the whole point of Legacy was to get over Ted DiBiase, and I'm the one here. Maybe he didn't want to take a shot at Ted. I don't know. But the whole point of the group was to get over both guys, but specifically Ted. And that didn't work out. Cody became the breakout star, but not immediately. The first breakout star of Legacy when the group first went their separate ways in 2010 was fucking Randy Orton. He came out as a babyface because people loved the guy. He was beloved and he was getting great reactions. He was the biggest star coming out of that group in 2010. Kind of the opposite effect of probably what they were hoping for when the group started in 2008. So, anyway, from Legacy, he becomes dashing in 2010. He wanted to make the most of it and really commit to the character, which he did. He says, when he's asked now in interviews and by people at meet and greets, did you actually break your nose? He says that he can't recall. He probably did not, but he kind of blurs the lines between kayfabe and reality to kind of make it a cool story if he did actually break his nose. So now he says he doesn't recall. But anyway, that went to the undashing persona in 2011 when he did break his nose in storyline. Again, I don't think that was a legit thing. I think that was always part of the storyline. The mask that he wore, which I did not know, was inspired by NBA player Richard Rip Hamilton because he was wearing a face mask. So Cody asked the same doctor that gave that guy his mask to make him a very similar mask that he could wear on WWE TV. He also used American Psycho, he says, as an inspiration for like, he's calm one moment, but sinister the next. That was some of his best character work, excuse me, in his entire career, was that undashing persona. It wasn't going to win him a world championship, but 2011 was a great year for Cody. He won the Intercontinental Championship with that gimmick, used that as a stepping stone to what was next, taking off the mask, kind of becoming early 2012 Cody Rhodes, one of my favorite incarnations of Cody Rhodes. But anyway, he passed out the paper bags. That got really over, and people like doing that. We hear from Miz a lot in this documentary. He talks about the fucking paper bag stuff. That actually led him to beating Rey Mysterio in his first singles pay-per-view match at WrestleMania 27. One of the bright spots of that show, in Georgia no less, in his home state. He beat Rey Mysterio, which is pretty cool. He recalls one of the best parts of the evening for him wasn't the match or the winner or whatever, but rather his father, Dusty, taking a picture of him. Because he had been a father, or rather a fan of his father his entire life. But that one night, his father was a fan of him, which was pretty cool. He gets emotional talking about it. He gets emotional a lot on this documentary. I don't blame him. Cody's an emotional guy. He's a sentimental guy. Pretty cool stuff here. Like I said, that led to him bringing back the classic Intercontinental Championship design in October of 2011. Great reign as champion late 2011, early 2012. A lot of defenses, great character work, some really good matches. Lost the championship in anticlimactic fashion in like fucking 5 minutes to Big Show at WrestleMania 28. That's when they were doing that whole, oh, Big Show's never had a WrestleMania moment, which he did at that point, by the way. I mean, it allowed Cody to work with a top talent, but he was already working with people like Randy Orton and Booker T and people like that. And then to lose the fucking Big Show, who he then got the belt back from a month later, only to lose it a month after that to Christian Cage. It was a mess. They clearly did not know what to do with Cody at that point. But anyway, in the midst of all of this, they say that Cody's thriving as Intercontinental Champion. One thing missing from him at that point was a significant other, and that led into the talk of Brandy Rhodes, meeting Brandy Rhodes, who at that point was Eden Styles in WWE. Dusty, again, through old archived content and archive footage, he mentions and he recalls meeting Brandy for the first time in FCW. And one thing led to another. Cody was there, I think, during one of her tryouts. He was just kind of sitting off to the side. They tell a story about how she was about to go out for a show, and she was a ring announcer. I think she came in wanting to be a wrestler or whatever, but they ended up putting her in a ring announcer role in 2011, I think. And she was about to go out for a show on the main roster, and Cody looked at her and said, listen, your hair is all messed up. It's up, like it's all poofy and whatever. You should probably go fix that before you go out. She goes to the backstage area. Beth Phoenix sees her and says, what are you doing back here? You're about to go out. Why not go out there? She said, well, someone told me my hair was messed up. I got to fix it. She goes, who told you that? And she says, well, Cody did. And she goes, your hair is fine. He's just messing with you. That's his way of flirting. Get on back out there. And that was kind of how it started. Cody maintains when telling the story now, he says, that he was not doing it to flirt with her and he was not kidding. He legitimately thought her hair was like all over the place and it was not as nice as it should have been or whatever. Maybe that was the dashing part of him speaking. I don't know. But I thought that was a funny story. They started dating soon after. They recall Battleground 2013, one of the best Cody Rhodes matches ever. It's a tag team match, him and Goldust against The Shield, Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. That show is one of the worst fucking pay-per-views I've ever seen in my entire wrestling fandom, at least in the 15 years I've been watching. Prior to that, there's a lot of bad shows. That is up there as one of the worst shows I've ever seen. But that being said, that match is one of the best matches I've ever seen. The moment was great. Dusty being there was great. That was when they were all feuding with the Authority and the Shield. And that was not the night they won the tag team titles. They ended up winning the tag team titles 8 days later on Raw. This was the pay-per-view match to get their jobs back. That was a great time on Raw. I mean, Raw at that point was putrid. But the Cody Rhodes stuff with Goldust and Dusty was untouchable. It was just excellent. But Michael Cole says in 2014, after that run was over, he was not going to live up to the potential of his father at that point in his career. And listen, I disagree. Cody is obviously more main event ready now than he was 10 years ago. But there was a point 10 years ago, almost exactly 10 years ago, in Money in the Bank, the people were behind Cody as a babyface. This was after the mustache crap. This was after the Sandow stuff. He was about to win Money in the Bank. Sandow won it instead. And he was feuding with Sandow. This was pre-Authority teaming with Goldust. And even teaming with Goldust, he was still super over. They could have pushed him in. They just chose not to. They put the fucking briefcase on Damian Sandow, who I thought was great, and I wasn't upset when he won. But they ended up doing nothing with Sandow. There was no plan for him to go further than the mid-card. He cashed in unsuccessfully anyway. The first person to cash in and lose by pinfall. He made history in that way. Why waste the briefcase when you could have put it on Cody Rhodes instead? They didn't. And when the Goldust tag team kind of ran its course, that would have been a prime opportunity to either turn him heel, have him go their separate ways, or keep him as a babyface. Because again, he was really thriving at that point, I thought, as a babyface. And that 2012 run as Intercontinental Champion proved it. They didn't see it that way, so instead they made him Stardust. So this bullshit like he wasn't ready yet is such crap. Like he was already a proven commodity in the mid-card. He had proven his worth in the tag team division. He was over. He was good. Yes, he was young, but they didn't even try. It's not even like they put him in main event feuds in 2013, 2014 after the Authority stuff and he flopped. No, he got over in spite of what they were doing with him, which at that point was nothing. And they still gave him the Stardust crap. I just don't get it. But anyway, so they gave him the Stardust stuff in June of 2014. They came up with a lot of different ideas for what it was supposed to be. Eventually, they just settled on him being a mini Goldust, which was just so fucking lazy. But it was all character. He was committed to it. We hear from Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Michael Cole, who said he really made the character his own. We hear from Matt Cardona, who's on this documentary and interviewed as well. The former Zack Ryder, and they say former WWE superstar. They don't put GCW Impact or NWA champion under his little headline there for his title, but still, the fact that Matt Cardona was interviewed and included is pretty cool. And they got him, but I guess they couldn't get Dustin Rhodes, whatever. But anyway, they all talk about how he would wear it to an amusement park, he would wear it out in public. He was really committed to that character. Even led to him feuding with Stephen Amell, the aforementioned Amell, in 2015, leading to that big SummerSlam match, and that got some mainstream attention. Led to him guest starring on Arrow a couple years later. Really cool opportunity, but he knew, as we all fucking knew, after a year of doing it, he was sick of that character. It really should have been a short-lived thing, but it went on for so much longer than it ever needed to. It was such a fucking waste of what Cody Rhodes could have done, not even now, but even then. What Cody Rhodes could have done and been an asset for that company, he was on main event. Largely with that character, he was on fucking main event. He was not winning championships. He was tag team champion once with Goldust again, and that was it. And he even knew, he admits here, that Goldust's level was beneath him. And it made him even that much more bitter, knowing how close he was to grabbing the brass rings in like 2012, which again, I agree, he was close to winning Money in the Bank in 2012, 2013, early 2014, and they just fucking dropped the ball. It's not a Cody Rhodes wasn't ready thing, it was a company dropped the ball on him type thing. So any other narrative is just wrong. I mean, I will argue with anyone about that all day. I mean, it's not a matter of like, oh, Cody wasn't interesting at that point. Maybe people would say that, and I understand, I guess, to a degree. But to say he wasn't even ready for like an upper mid-card push is just blasphemy. So the best they could do with him is to make him Stardust for 2 years? I mean, what a fucking waste. And he even said that he was not going to be a world champion as Stardust. He just wasn't. It was a mid-card gimmick at best. He calls it his rock bottom. And after talking with his father about it, Dusty said that he should just quit. But Cody didn't know how to get out of it. He pitched ideas, and he told him, hey, how can we do this, blah, blah, blah. He didn't know how to get out of it. But Dusty around that point was still teaching at NXT. He was teaching the Kevin Owenses and the Sami Zayns and the Seth Rollinses and people like that. And he resented those NXT quote-unquote kids, Corey Graves, because they weren't his kids. His real kid was Cody Rhodes. So, I mean, not that Dusty wasn't paying attention to Cody, because he would still do interviews and be interviewed at that point saying Cody's a future world champion, he should be Intercontinental champion, he should not be Stardust, blah, blah, blah. He was still putting over Cody, so it's not like Cody resented his father, but he did resent the kids that got to train with Dusty and really learn from him and benefit from his teachings and go on to superstardom in 2014 and 2015. And then obviously around that point, he passed away. So Dusty gets told he had an infection, and I think it was a stomach infection. And Cody recalls the whole hospital experience and how depressing it is, and it really takes him back to even think about it. They were told that Dusty would have no quality of life if he lived. So he went from praying that Dusty would live to praying that he would pass. And he ended up passing in mid-June 2015, because if he had lived and they didn't pull the plug, he would have no quality of life whatsoever. They show the eulogy that Cody did for Dusty at Dusty's funeral. They showed that here and how great it was. And he said that people, and it was something I was wondering about, and I'm sure he's answered this before in other interviews, and it's something I was always curious about. Why didn't he go back to being Cody Rhodes when he came back to TV a couple of weeks after his dad passed away? Because it would have been tacky, he said. And Dusty even told him that. Like, oh, this person should have done that after that person died. He even said, listen, I've had my time. I don't want people talking about me after I die. Which they did, because he's a fucking legend. How are they not going to talk about Dusty Rhodes post-life, posthumously or whatever? They did. And then they made a whole documentary about it, and they talked about him on TV. They would mention Dusty's passing. But Cody would feel like it was icky to go back to being Cody Rhodes all of a sudden just because his dad died. So he used the Stardust character as his mask, as kind of like his armor, while he grieved, or lack thereof at that point, because he mentions later that he didn't really do the grieving process properly. He just kind of moved on immediately. He ended up wrestling Amell alongside Wade Barrett, King Barrett at that point, against Neville and Amell at SummerSlam 2015. And he felt like that was his final bow. He took a literal final bow that night because he felt like that was it for him as Stardust. There was nothing more to do. He reached his ceiling with that character. He thought that was the final chapter, time to move on. But he says that wasn't even on WWE's radar. He sent emails to people asking them, hey, where can we go from here? Can I go back to being Cody Rhodes? Can I do this? Can I do that? And he got ignored. He even recalls an instance where he went up to a writer, pitching him an idea, and the writer gave him a fucking facepalm, basically. Didn't actually touch him, but like put his hand up to his face, like go away, because he was typing away on a computer. Cody Rhodes looks over. The laptop was powered off, so he was clearly just pretending. Cody Rhodes got pissed, went over to Triple H and said, I'm going to punch that writer in the fucking face. He didn't say fucking, I'm sure he did, but he didn't say that here. And Triple H, before Cody walked off, said, listen, you got to rattle the cages. You got to rattle the cages. That's what he told him. And Cody, it's at a certain point, after so many times trying to convince the company, listen, let me go back to being Cody Rhodes, he just got burned out trying to convince them. So he mentions like he would drink whiskey. He had like one of those tumblers or whatever, like a steel tumbler. He would put, instead of water or whatever in, he would put whiskey in there. He would come back from doing his match on a house show and then just drink whiskey for the rest of the show. And he was hoping he would get fired. Like, he wasn't like trying to get fired, but he was hoping he would get fired. That was his only out. But he knew they weren't going to fire him. He said he was a legacy performer. He was a multi-generational talent. Dusty had passed. They weren't going to fire him. He had been there forever. They weren't going to let go of him. He knew he would not be future endeavored, but he knew he had to get out. So he ended up requesting and being granted his release in May of 2016. He put out a whole Twitter statement, which they didn't show here, but that's what he ended up doing. The mom thought that it was a dumb idea. The mom disagrees with a lot of what Cody Rhodes did throughout his life, and she makes it known here in this documentary. She thought that he would either end up dead or in jail. Those were her exact words, I guess, in typical mom fashion, I suppose. Brandy, on the other hand, his wife, was very happy with the decision. She said, no one's happy here. Let's move on. They don't mention it here, but she also quit the company literally days after Cody did. Cody quit and got his release in late May of 2016. She had her final appearance, I believe, at Extreme Rules 2016, and she was gone after that. So she left right alongside him right afterward. They show the list of all the opponents that he wanted to work with, from Chris Hero to Moose to Dalton Castle, Adam Cole, the Bucks, everyone else. Roderick Strong, I think, might have been the only person he never got to work with, which, ironically, Roddy left the company earlier this year, around the same time that Cody was coming into WWE last year. So those paths never really crossed. But anyway, the list kind of went on to live on in infamy, and other people have mocked it since then. I saw Aiden English do it recently, I think, among other people. But he had his first post-WWE match at an Evolve show over SummerSlam weekend in 2016. I think not too far from where SummerSlam was. I went to SummerSlam that year. I think that Evolve show was in New York City, and SummerSlam that year was at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. But they show a lot of footage, which I was really happy to see, and they show the founder, the owner of the company as well. They interview him very quickly, Michael Lombardi. They show a lot of footage from Northeast Wrestling. And anyone who knows me well enough knows I've been following the promotion now for, almost 15 years, since 2009, so about 14 years for me now. And I was around for that Cody Rhodes run. I wasn't there when he won the NEW Championship in 2017 or whatever it was, but he came into the company in 2016, had those matches with Kurt Angle. One of his first post-WWE match was at the Evolve show, I think against Zack Sabre Jr. His second post-WWE match, I think, was in Northeast Wrestling against Kurt Angle. And they had a series of matches that were all great. We hear from Kurt on this documentary. They show a lot of footage from his NEW time. I was at one of those shows where they showed footage of him facing Sami Callihan back in August of 2016. It was a couple of weeks after. It was shortly after he left WWE, and I missed my chance to meet Cody that night. Ended up meeting him a couple weeks later at a different show, I think a Chaotic Wrestling show or whatever in Lowell, Mass. But yeah, he worked with Kurt Angle there. He worked with Mike Bennett, all the local talent in Northeast Wrestling. Jerry Lawler, he had a championship with there. He had a championship match with in NEW. Brad Hollister, Flip Gordon, the list goes on. And all those people learned a lot from working with Cody, I'm sure. And it was a really great run, and I'm really glad they showed all that footage. And NEW allowed WWE to use that footage. And I'm sure they get a nice payday out of it, nice exposure if nothing else. But yeah, he worked with Angle, and Cody wanted to prove that he could be the main event. He could be main event material. He bet on himself, made his net worth skyrocket. We hear that from Hulk Hogan. I have no fucking clue why they interviewed Hulk Hogan of all people. Was he even following Cody Rhodes post-WWE? Give me a break. Hulk Hogan was a Cody Rhodes fan in 2016? I doubt it. Not that I hate Hulk Hogan, but I'm just kind of surprised they interviewed him here. I guess he's a big name, if nothing else. But I just, is he reading off a prompter? You can't tell me those are original thoughts from Hulk fucking Hogan, who I'm sure he wasn't even in WWE at that point. That was when he got blackballed for that dumb shit that he said, among other stuff. So, anyway, they talked about how he got to honor Dusty outside of WWE by doing what he was doing without going too overboard. And he was able to deal with his father's passing and really grieve and let it sink in by meeting fans. He worked with New Japan soon after that. New Japan wanted him to come in as the American Nightmare. And I guess they had footage already of Dusty from time that Dusty spent in Japan, I guess. I don't remember. But he was able to do the whole Forbidden Door gimmick. And he mentioned Impact. He mentioned Ring of Honor. He was able to make appearances in multiple promotions before finally signing a contract, I think with Ring of Honor, an exclusive deal with ROH in late 2017. He was a free agent for a year and a half. He made multiple appearances in Impact. He won the fucking Ring of Honor World Championship, I think, as a free agent. He worked in New Japan. He did GFW. He was doing all the promotions. Northeast Wrestling, Evolve. all the promotions back in 2016, 2017. It was really, really cool to see. That was I met Cody like 2 or 3 times during that run when he was on the indies and doing all this other sort of stuff. So it was really, really cool to see. But anyway, he was really the Forbidden Door before the Forbidden Door became cool to say. I mean, there were other instances of that pre-Cody, but he was kind of the first one in recent years to really make it popular. And he was able to work with multiple promotions. And he also was one of the few indie wrestlers to get mainstream while on the indies, like one of the biggest names on the independent scene and make a name for himself outside of WWE. He talks about changing his hair color from brown to blonde in 2017. And it was kind of clear to him that he and the Young Bucks, who he mentions by name, and they include a lot of Being the Elite footage here on the documentary, which I'm really glad they included. It was clear that they could make a bigger show, that being All In, and incorporate all these different independent promotions into one big show called All In. They self-finance the entire thing. He talks about scaling the tickets back, like the prices to be fair, like it was his first time really in that position as a promoter. It took place in Chicago, September 1st, 2018, almost exactly 5 years ago, which we're going to have the 5-year anniversary of All In coming up at the end of August this year. And that led right into AEW, All Elite Wrestling being born in January of 2019. He talks about his daughter Liberty and her being born in 2021, I think it was. Or 2020, I forget. But his status was uncertain, he said, in January 2022. His contract expired. So they went immediately from AEW being born. And they do spend a decent amount of time talking about it and including footage and whatnot from BTE, which is great. But they don't talk about anything he did during his run in AEW. They don't talk about the not being able to win the World Championship stipulation. They don't talk about that. They don't include any footage of his matches. They don't even include any pictures, I don't think, which I thought was weird. Sometimes they don't feature footage from these promotions, but they feature like fucking Getty Image stuff, which they did when they were on like red carpet for like the Warner Brothers, like the Warner Media upfronts and stuff like that, but not the actual shows, which I thought was really weird. So clearly WWE and AEW must not be on great terms if no footage or pictures even. I mean, not that they were going to include or feature Tony Khan, but still, I just thought it was weird that like they just completely moved past it. And the documentary was 2 hours as it was, so you're not going to include that much. But they didn't even talk about the fact that he was booed towards the end there. I mean, he kind of alludes to it when he talks about his WWE return. But anyway, back to January 2022. His status was uncertain. He was working without a contract per Fightful, which ended up being true. And Bruce said, through some mutual friends, hey, if Cody is indeed free, tell him to give us a call. And Cody called Bruce like almost immediately. He said that Bruce said that Cody called him within 5 minutes of him saying that to another person. So the next day, Vince and Bruce flew out to Cody's home, which does not happen often nowadays, to kind of meet with him about a potential return. And Cody saw it as closure. And Vince even told him, listen, we don't want to change anything about you. And Cody asked, like, listen, if you bring me in, I got to have the complete package, the look, the theme song, everything. And Vince, which is not fucking true. He's like, oh, of course we won't change anything about you. We want the complete package. That's why we're bringing you back, which is so bullshit because they bring back a lot of people and they change a lot of things about them. So I'm sure he was just saying that to appease Cody in the moment. But anyway, Bruce knew as soon as they left Cody's house that Cody was a done deal and that he was coming back. So Cody says that he can't say why he left AEW. I guess maybe, I assume he, like, I thought initially when I heard that, I'm thinking, okay, he can't say like, oh, I don't know if there was any one reason. When he says that, the way he words it makes it sound like he says that because he can't legitimately say why he left the company because he signed an NDA. He doesn't say here that he signed an NDA or it's because he can't talk about it because of that. But Tony and Cody have never actually publicly spoke about it. I know Cody says, oh, I've always wanted to win the championship. My dad never could. He even says here that was a byproduct of his departure from AEW. He left AEW for a personal issue. He said it wasn't because of money or other talent. So it wasn't him not getting along with the Elite or Kenny Omega or whoever, or CM Punk or anything. And it wasn't a money thing. That's what he says. And Cody's pretty genuine. He said it was a personal issue. What that issue is, I just feel like if it was as simple as him wanting to go back to being a performer, and it was as simple as he wanted the challenge for a world championship, I mean, they would have worked something out. He would have just said that. You don't just sign an NDA because oh, he wanted to win a world title, but he's not going to say that. Like, no, there's definitely more to it. We may never know why he actually left the company, because he even said here he didn't leave for the Dusty thing. That was a byproduct of his departure, meaning that was not the primary reason. But we hear from Triple H saying, oh, of course, He thinks it's the world. He thinks it's the world title thing. Triple H says, you're not going to want to win if you want to win the world title, you're not going to do it in a secondary promotion. He got the secondary promotion dig in there about AEW. Probably thinking maybe they asked AEW for interviews or for footage and they said no, or they just never asked. Regardless, they got their obligatory dig in there about AEW. Which I'm just thinking, why? I would expect nothing less from the higher-ups in this company, because I'm sure even after all these years, even with 80,000 tickets sold to All In, I know AEW is not on the level of WWE, but they're not a secondary promotion like fucking Impact Wrestling. AEW is bigger than they ever were. I know Impact was doing higher numbers at a certain point, but in terms of business and being a true alternative at getting a real TV deal, the talent and everything else, AEW is an objectively bigger company than Impact ever was. They're doing higher attendance numbers and so much more. They're making more money in revenue and whatever. It's not even close. It's not even remotely close. So Triple H getting that in there was unnecessary. But again, what do you expect out of a WWE documentary? I'm not even an AEW shill either. I'm not even offended by it. I just laugh because I would expect nothing less. But anyway, he talks about how he got to go after the biggest and first dream that he ever had in regards to winning the World Championship. His dad never could in going back to WWE. Bruce Pritchard says that everything they had for Seth Rollins at WrestleMania 38 fell through. You don't fucking say. Because remember the plan at the time, the report was he was going to work with Shane McMahon. And then Shane got fired, actually. He got fired. They don't mention that here, obviously. But Shane got fired. Thank fucking God that fell through. So that didn't happen. Wasn't there another idea that he was supposed to work with Owens or something? I think he and Owens were going to be in the World Tag Team title match at WrestleMania. But then Owens ended up working with Stone Cold Steve Austin. So that ended up falling through. He wasn't going to face Owens again, or maybe they were going to team or something. I don't know. But that fell through. So it just kind of worked out perfectly where Cody was coming in and he could face him. It was a perfect storm to pair him with Cody, Bruce says. And it wasn't even finalized, Seth says, until 2 weeks before the pay-per-view. The mom couldn't be there for WrestleMania 38. The granddaughter was having a wedding or something, so she couldn't be there, but she watched from their location with shitty internet or whatever. And Cody says that he doesn't know how the fans would react. And they take us through the whole day and the experience and the reaction and whatever. I don't really write down too many notes here because everything from this point forward is pretty... We've seen it and it wasn't really anything new. But the general gist of it was that he didn't know how fans would react. People had told him that they may not remember you, which is laughable. AEW, you call it a secondary promotion, but that's where this guy spent a majority of his time for the last number of years. Yet a majority of the people who are not all hardcore wrestling fans reacted to Cody Rhodes coming back and the music at WrestleMania 38. So that should put the bullshit about AEW being a secondary promotion to bed. But I digress. So they talk about the reaction. Maybe people would boo because he came from the opposing company, came from the rival company. No, it was a massive, massive babyface reaction. He talks about the surreal reaction everyone does, and he wanted to tell his story in the ring that night. He did by busting out the old finishers of, his brother and his father and everything. And he says that his dad always believed in him, and he would want to thank him right now if he was around today. And some footage they showed from right after WrestleMania 38, the night of, last year. And he gets emotional calling WWE his home. And before recently, he feels like had he called WWE his home previously, he would have been a hypocrite for doing so. But he called WWE his home here and saying that he finally came to terms with that in the last year or so, I guess. So on the post-WrestleMania Raw last year, he announced his intentions to win the WWE title. Again, the title his dad never could never capture. And then they fast forward to how he got hurt a couple days before Hell in a Cell 2022 bench pressing. He doesn't like talking about it because he feels like he's an embarrassment that shouldn't have happened. It was a freak accident. Well, working out, he hurt his pec and he was out for many, many months because of a simple bench pressing incident. And Bruce was like, we don't know how to substitute. It's our main event. Roman Reigns was not defending on pay-per-view at that point. And this was days before the pay-per-view, even after Raw. If it was before Raw, maybe they would have come up with a new main event. I don't know. But this was a day or two before the pay-per-view. And Cody did not want to cancel the match. They actually play one of the audio messages, one of the voice memos that he had sent to a doctor or an official, whether it be Vince or Triple H or whatever, saying, listen, I feel like I could do it. No more damage can be done. It can't be injured any more than it already has. It hurts. He's not telling anyone that at this point. It hurts, but I'll still do it. And he told his mom that it didn't hurt and that it did not feel as bad as it looked. But he lied about the pain. He said that after it was over. They recapped the match, the legendary performance that night, which I'm sure Vince had a whole new respect for him after it was over. And they show Vince congratulating him backstage after the match was over, which was cool. And even said that it probably endeared him to fans that may not have come around to him yet after that performance. He underwent shoulder, pec surgery, whatever, days later. They show him training with the students at the Nightmare Factory in October of 22. And he said that he kind of felt normal after 3 months, but he couldn't lift any weights. So he wasn't ready to come back yet. He felt like he didn't feel any pain or whatever, but he couldn't lift any weight until like a couple months after that. So he didn't know how he would be received upon his return. He'd been gone for so long, all of his momentum up in smoke. Would have picked back up where he left off? The answer is yes, he did. And one of the saving graces he said during that period was that he had his wife by his side, supporting him every second of the way. But he also got to spend some real quality time with his daughter, which he probably would not have had otherwise. He got the green light to train in December. They show him training with Carmelo Hayes, which was super cool because Cody Rhodes, being a former Northeast Wrestling heavyweight champion, Carmelo Hayes, formerly known as Christian Casanova, a former Northeast Wrestling live champion, their secondary title. So that's probably why he trained with Carmelo. I'm sure they didn't mention that here, but I'm sure he handpicked Carmelo because, first of all, Carmelo's great. But second of all, it's because he probably remembers him and knows him from their Northeast Wrestling days, which is pretty fucking cool. He eyed a Rumble return. He thought it made the most sense to be back in time for the Rumble. They started showing the promos, which they don't recap here, but they started showing those Road to Recovery promos for Rhodes in early January of 2023, earlier this year. They recap the Rumble win. They show the build-up to the WrestleMania 39 match with Roman Reigns, including all the media he was doing. It even said, you either do the thing or you strike out. And they show the match, they recap the match, and they recap his fucking loss that night and everyone's reactions. And they don't show my reaction, but I was there and I was very pissed and I was very disappointed. But Triple H says that Dusty would have been proud. He says that to him in the moment after the match was over, which was really cool. His peers praise him. All the talking heads that were featured on the documentary kind of go around talking about how great Cody Rhodes is and his road back to WWE and his roads to the top, no pun intended, going from undesirable to undeniable, blah, 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 his whole catchphrase. And then he ends the documentary with this: I will carry this dream on my shoulder until it becomes a reality. Maybe a double entendre for the Dream Dusty Rhodes, I don't know. But that's why, going back to what I said earlier, it very much feels like this was supposed to culminate with Cody Rhodes winning the World Championship, and then he didn't, because they show him losing, and that was it. I mean, how do you really follow that up, though? I know this was made over the course of many years, and they finally came out with it. Perfect timing with SummerSlam being this weekend. It was cool and all. You don't really follow that up with like the Brock Lesnar talk, because that hasn't culminated yet, and we're not like remotely close to when he's probably going to win the championship at some point. For his sake, I hope he does win the championship. It kind of ended this thing on an unsatisfying note, because he did not do what the entire documentary said that he was set out to do, and he probably still will. I don't know if they wanted to wait until next year's WrestleMania to pay this thing off with him on the road back to the championship, beating Roman. Maybe they didn't want to risk it. Hey, you know what? Listen, maybe Jey Uso is winning the championship at SummerSlam. Who knows? I had seen today Roman's not advertised for Fastlane, Payback, or even Survivor Series, so maybe they'll add him. But if Roman's not being advertised for like the rest of the fucking year, maybe he is dropping the championship. I hope he's not. I mean, that sounds weird, but I really do think it should be Cody beating Roman and not Jey Uso. But nonetheless, I digress. Great stuff here. Super strong documentary. Well worth the 2-hour runtime. It just breezed by. Peacock, thankfully, I don't have the non-ad version. I have the ads. They got all the ads out of the way early, so I was able to watch it uninterrupted for 2 hours, and it was great. Perfect timing with it being SummerSlam week. Really makes you, I think, like Cody that much more. I learned a lot about him that I did not know previously. A lot of great talking heads. They touched upon pretty much everything, and just the AEW career, like I said, they didn't spend that much time on, but it's better than them completely ignoring it, which they have done in the past, let's be honest. Anyone saying, oh, it was a given they were going to talk about AEW. I mean, not really. They could have just said, oh, he left WWE, made a name for himself, and came back. Cody Rhodes, from my opinion, from my dealings with him and just seeing how he interacts with people and whatever, he's pretty genuine. And I feel like he knew that it would be disingenuous to leave that stuff out. They even got footage, a lot of footage from BTE, which was really cool. But anyway, I thought this was a great piece of business. Check it out right now on Peacock, Becoming Cody Rhodes. Thank you guys for checking out my lengthy review. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Check out the latest hashtag GSM for GM from earlier today, latest episode. A lot more content coming this week on the road to SummerSlam this weekend. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham Giason Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.